There is a memory you carry that still shapes you. Perhaps it happened when you were 7 years old. Perhaps last Tuesday. You return to it often, not always consciously. And each time you do, it confirms something you believe about yourself, something limiting, something you wish weren't true. Now let me ask you this. What if that memory never happened the way you remember it? Not because your recall is faulty, not because you misunderstood what occurred, but because the past itself is not a fixed thing. Because memory is not a recording. Because what you call your history is actually a current state of consciousness, one you are maintaining right now, in this present moment, through the act of attention. Neville Goddard taught that you can revise the past, not symbolically, not as a therapeutic reframing exercise, but actually, imaginally, from the inside out. And if that is true, if the past is imaginal rather than factual, then what becomes of past lives? What becomes of karma? What becomes of the entire edifice of causes stretching backward through time, supposedly locking you into the person you are today? This is where two great streams of esoteric thought diverge, and where Neville makes a choice that changes everything. Welcome to Neville Goddard Universe. This is the first part of a short series on revision, Neville's most radical and least understood teaching. In this episode, we're going to explore why Neville rejected the doctrine of reincarnation in his later lectures, even though he used it symbolically in his earlier teachings. We're going to examine what it means to say the past is imaginal, not factual. We'll walk through his 1970 lecture, No One to Change But Self, as the definitive statement on personal history. And we'll end with a practical revision protocol, a step-by-step method for rewriting a defining memory using the same SATS-based imaginal replay Neville taught for manifesting desires. The thumbnail you clicked on said, "No past needed." And I mean that literally. If you've been told that your present life is the karmic payoff of actions taken in previous incarnations, if you've been taught that you must balance old debts, unwind old wounds, recover old selves, this episode will offer you a different door. Not as a rejection of mystical truth, but as a deeper understanding of it. If this kind of exploration matters to you, if you're here because you sense there's something larger connecting all these streams of wisdom, then a like or a subscription keeps this work alive, and I'm grateful for every mind that walks this path with us. Let's begin. Neville Goddard said this, and he said it often. Consciousness is the only reality. Not consciousness, Nate, matter. Not consciousness plus history. Just consciousness. All else, the world, the body, the past, the future, is consciousness pushed out. Objectified states of awareness. Hardened imagination. If you take that seriously, truly seriously, then the past cannot be what you think it is. It cannot be a series of events that happened to you, independent of your current state of consciousness. It cannot be the cause of who you are now. Because in Neville's system, there is no causality running from past to present. There is only causality running from consciousness to experience. From the inside out. From assumption to fact. Your past, then, is not behind you. It is in you. It is a story you are telling yourself right now, in this moment, about who you were and what happened and what it all meant. And because it is a story, an imaginal construct, it can be revised. Let me ground this in something concrete. Imagine a woman, we'll call her Sarah, who has carried a memory for 30 years. When she was 12, her father spoke harshly to her in front of relatives. He said she was lazy, that she would never amount to anything. She remembers the room, the smell of coffee, the way her aunt looked away, the burning in her chest. And for 30 years, Sarah has used that memory as evidence. Evidence that she is not enough. Evidence that she must prove herself. Evidence that authority figures will always see her as less than. That memory is not inert. It is active. It is generative. It shapes her relationships, her career, her self-concept. It is, in Neville's language, an assumption, and assumptions harden into facts. Now, conventional therapy would say, let's process that memory. Let's understand why your father said what he said. Let's reframe it. Let's integrate it. Past life regression therapy would say, perhaps this wound is older than this life. Perhaps your father was once your oppressor in another incarnation. Let's go back further. Let's heal the karmic chain. But Neville says something entirely different. He says, revise it. Not as a way of denying what happened, not as a way of lying to yourself, but as a way of recognizing that the past is not a fact. It is an imaginal event, and imaginal events can be reimagined. In his 1954 lecture series, Neville said this, "The past and the future are only present assumptions." Read that again. The past is a present assumption. You are assuming the past right now. You are constructing it, maintaining it, feeding it with attention. And what you feed, lives. What you withdraw attention from, dies. So Sarah, instead of analyzing the memory, instead of seeking past life origins for it, enters into the imaginal act. She closes her eyes. She returns to that room. But this time, she hears her father say something different. "Sarah, you have such potential. I'm proud of you." She feels his hand on her shoulder. She sees her aunt smile. She stays with that revised scene until it feels natural, until it carries the sensory weight of reality. And then something extraordinary happens. The old memory begins to lose its power. Not because she's suppressed it, not because she's convinced herself it didn't happen, but because she has changed the imaginal event from which her present flows. She has rewritten the story, and the story writes the self. This is not positive thinking. This is not affirmation. This is revision. And Neville taught it as a literal, operative, metaphysical law. He said in The Pruning Shears of Revision, which is a chapter in Your Faith is Your Fortune, do not waste one moment in regret, for to think feelingly of the mistakes of the past is to reinfect yourself. And then he goes further. He says that before you sleep, you should review the day. And wherever you acted or spoke or thought in a way that did not reflect your ideal self, you should revise it. Replay it imaginally as it should have been, not as it was. Why? Because the past is not fixed, it is imaginal, and imagination creates reality. Now here is where the divergence begins. Because for thousands of years, esoteric traditions have taught that the past is fixed, not in this life, but across lives. That you are bound by karma. That the soul reincarnates, carrying forward debts and lessons and wounds. And in his earlier lectures, Neville himself used the language of reincarnation. He spoke of the soul's journey through many forms. He framed it symbolically, as a way of describing states of consciousness. But in his later years, Neville stopped using that language. He rejected it, not as false, but as unnecessary, as a distraction, as a framework that obscures the fundamental truth. There is no one to change but self. Let's be precise about this. In Neville's earlier teachings, particularly in the 1940s and early 1950s, he would occasionally speak in terms that sound like reincarnation. He would talk about the soul descending into matter, ascending back to spirit, passing through states. He would reference scripture in ways that allowed for multiple incarnations of the same principle, the same being, across different forms. But he was never speaking literally. He was speaking imaginally. States of consciousness, for Neville, are like lives. You enter one. You experience from it. You leave it. You enter another. In a single day, you can live and die 1,000 times, 1,000 states. Poverty, wealth, rejection, love. Each one feels total while you are in it. Each one has its own logic, its own past, its own future. And so, when ancient traditions spoke of reincarnation, Neville read them as descriptions of this process. Not the transmigration of a soul across centuries, but the transmigration of consciousness across states. But by the late 1960s and into the 1970s, Neville's language changed. He became more direct, more uncompromising. and he began to explicitly reject reincarnation as a literal doctrine. Why? Because reincarnation, when taken literally, does something dangerous. It externalizes cause. It places the origin of your suffering outside your present consciousness. It says, you are this way because of what you did in another life. You must pay for it. You must balance it. You must wait for it to resolve. And that, for Neville, is the great lie. In his 1970 lecture, No One to Change But Self, Neville said this, and I want you to hear it in full. There is nothing to change but your concept of self. As soon as you change your concept of self, your world reshapes itself to conform to that concept. You do not have to go back into so-called past lives. You do not have to dig into your childhood. You do not have to analyze your parents. You only have to change your concept of self. This is the definitive statement, and it is radically liberating. Because if there is no past to undo, if there is no karmic ledger to balance, then you are free right now. You are not the effect of 10,000 causes stretching backward through time. You are the cause. You are the operant power. And the past, whatever it was, is only as real as you make it by consenting to it in imagination. Now let's bring in the parallel tradition. The doctrine of karma and reincarnation is most deeply developed in the Hindu and Buddhist traditions. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna teaches Arjuna that the soul is eternal, that it passes through many bodies, that actions in one life bear fruit in the next. This is presented as liberation, as a way of understanding why suffering is not arbitrary, why the soul's journey is just. And there is profound psychological truth in that. The idea that your present circumstances reflect your past choices is not false. It is simply incomplete. Because what Neville saw, and what the deepest interpreters of the Gita also saw, is that karma is not a cosmic bookkeeping system. It is a description of consciousness. Every action, every thought, every assumption leaves a trace in consciousness. Those traces shape your future experience. Not because the universe is punishing or rewarding you, but because consciousness externalizes itself. What you assume, you become. What you believe, you see. And if that is true, then the question is not, what did I do in a past life? The question is, what am I assuming now? The Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, in his commentary on the Diamond Sutra, writes, the past is not gone. It is present in the form of the present. And then he says, if you transform the present, you transform the past. Read that again. If you transform the present, you transform the past. That is Neville's revision, spoken in Buddhist language. In Vedanta, there is a concept called Maya, illusion. Not the illusion that the world does not exist, but the illusion that the world exists independently of consciousness. The illusion that what you see is objective, fixed, external. And the method for dissolving Maya is not to escape the world, but to recognize that you are its creator. That Brahman, pure consciousness, is the only reality, and all else is Brahman in costume. Neville said it this way, the world is yourself pushed out. The Upanishads say, Tat Tavam Asi, thou art that, same truth, different words. And if the world is yourself pushed out, if the entire field of experience, past and future included, is consciousness objectified, then there is no past that can bind you unless you consent to it. There is no karma that can hold you unless you assume it. This is why Neville rejected reincarnation in his later years. Not because the soul does not evolve, not because states are not traversed, but because the framework of past lives externalizes the problem. It gives you something other than self to blame. And the moment you do that, you lose your power. You clicked on this video because the thumbnail said, no past needed. And now you know what that means. It means you do not need to recover a past self, heal a past wound, or balance a past debt. You only need to revise the imaginal event. You only need to change the story you are telling yourself about what happened. And the moment you do, the facts rearrange themselves. Not because you've denied reality, but because you've recognized that reality is imaginal, and imagination is under your control. Now, let's make this practical. I'm going to walk you through a step-by-step revision protocol based on Neville's SATS method, the state akin to sleep. This is the same technique he taught for manifesting desires, but applied to the past instead of the future. You will need a specific memory, not a vague sense of unworthiness, not a general feeling, a specific event, something you can see, hear, feel, a moment that, when you return to it, still carries a charge, still makes you contract, still defines you in a way you do not want. Maybe it was a rejection, a betrayal, a moment of humiliation, a harsh word from a parent, a failure that confirmed your worst belief about yourself. Choose one, just one. You don't need to work on your entire past at once. Revision is surgical. You go in, you change the scene, you let it radiate outward. Here is how you do it. Step 1. Enter the state akin to sleep. This is the drowsy, hypnagogic state just before sleep, or just after waking. Your body is relaxed. Your conscious mind is quiet. The imaginal faculty is most active here. Neville called this the state of receptivity. The gate is open. You can induce this state by lying down, closing your eyes, and taking slow, deep breaths. Let your body become heavy. Let your thoughts slow. You are not trying to fall asleep. You are trying to reach that border state where imagination feels as real as perception. Step 2. Recall the memory as it happened. Let the scene come back, not to dwell on it, not to re-traumatize yourself, but to locate it clearly. See the room. Hear the voices. Feel the feeling. Notice where you are in the scene. Notice what you see through your own eyes. This is important. You are not watching the memory from outside. You are in it. First person, present tense. Step 3. Freeze the scene just before the wounding moment. Right before the harsh word. Right before the rejection. Right before the failure. Freeze it there. You are about to change what happens next. Step 4. Revise the scene. Now, imaginally, let the scene unfold differently. Not as you wish it had happened in some abstract sense, but as it would have happened if your ideal self, your true self, had been fully present. If your father spoke harshly, hear him speak kindly. If you were rejected, see yourself received with warmth. If you failed, see yourself succeed. If you were humiliated, see yourself honored. And this is crucial. Do not watch this happen. Experience it. 2. Feel the relief. Hear the tone of voice. See the face soften. Let your body respond. Let the tears come if they come. Let the warmth spread. Neville said, you must make it natural. The revised scene must feel more real than the original memory. It must carry sensory weight. It must feel like it happened. Step 5. Loop the revised scene until it stabilizes. Don't do this once and move on. Repeat it. Let it play out again. And again. Each time, add more detail, more feeling, more naturalness. Neville would often say, I looped the scene until I fell asleep in it. That is the goal. To let the revised memory become the dominant imaginal form. To let it replace the old structure. Step 6. Let it go. When you are done, when the scene feels complete, when it feels real, let it go. Do not test it. Do not check to see if it worked. Do not return to the old memory to see if it still hurts. You have done the imaginal act. Trust it. The outer world will conform. Not always immediately, not always in the way you expect, but it will conform. Because consciousness is the only reality. You may find, days or weeks later, that when you try to recall the original memory, it feels distant, faded. Or you may find that your interpretation of it has changed entirely. That is not self-deception. That is the imaginal past reshaping itself to match your revised assumption. And this is where revision becomes something more than technique. It becomes metaphysics. Because if you can revise one memory, you can revise any memory. If you can change the past, then the past was never fixed. If the past was never fixed, then time is not what you thought it was. And if time is not what you thought it was, then you are not the effect of history. You are the cause. You are the operant power. You are the one Neville called SIAM. One more thing. You can also do this for others. If someone wronged you and you carry bitterness, you can revise the scene and imagine them acting with love, not to excuse them, not to deny harm, but to free yourself. Because the person you carry in your memory is not the person out there. It is an imaginal construct, and you control what you imagine. Neville said, "Forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace." Revision is the mechanism of that forgiveness. You rewrite the scene, you release the charge, and in doing so, you release yourself. So let's step back and ask the larger question. Why does Neville's teaching on revision converge so powerfully with the mystical traditions that teach karma, Maya, and the imaginal nature of time? Because all of these systems, at their deepest level, are saying the same thing: consciousness is primary. The Hindu sage Nisargadatta Maharaj said, "The only thing you can be sure of is I am. All else is inference." That is Neville. That is Vedanta. That is the perennial teaching. The Kabbalists speak of tikkun, the repair of the world. But they also teach that the repair is not external. It is the repair of consciousness, the elevation of fallen sparks, the restoration of divine unity within the self. And how is that done? Through the imaginal act, through the raising of Yesod to Tifereth, through the union of the personal self with the greater self. Neville did not use those terms, but he taught the same process. He called it assumption. He called it revision. He called it the transformation of self-concept. But the mechanics are identical. You descend into the imaginal. You reshape the form. You rise, and the world reflects the change. In quantum theory, though we must be cautious with metaphors drawn from physics, there is a recognition that the observer affects the observed, that the act of measurement collapses possibility into actuality, that the past, in certain interpretations, is not fixed until it is observed. Neville said this in 1948, long before the popular interpretation of quantum mechanics became widespread. He said, "The past exists only as it is recorded in your brain. Change the record, and you change the past." And the mystics, across every tradition, have known this. Not because they studied physics, but because they studied consciousness. And they discovered that consciousness is not in time. Time is in consciousness. This is what the convergence tells us. It tells us that when human beings go deep enough into the nature of reality, whether through Hindu meditation, Kabbalistic contemplation, Christian mysticism, or Neville's imaginal practice, they arrive at the same place. They discover that the self is not a product of the world. The world is a product of the self. And therefore, the self can change the world by changing itself. And if that is true, if consciousness is the operant power, then no past can bind you, no karma can limit you, no memory can define you. Unless you consent to it, unless you feed it, unless you assume it, you are not the sum of what happened to you. You are the sum of what you assume about what happened to you. And assumption can be changed. If this exploration has resonated with you, if it's opened something or clarified something, a like or a subscription keeps this work alive. And I'm deeply grateful for each of you who walks this path with us. You came here because the thumbnail said, "No past needed." And now you understand that those 3 words are not hyperbole. They are an invitation into a different metaphysics, a different relationship with time, with memory, with selfhood. Neville taught that the past is imaginal, not factual. He taught that revision is not therapy, it is creation. And he taught that no external force, no karmic debt, no childhood wound, no past life pattern has the power to define you unless you give it that power through assumption. The traditions that speak of karma are not wrong. They are describing the same law. Neville described, consciousness externalizes itself. But where those traditions often place the cause in a distant past, Neville places it here, now, in the act of imagination. And that changes everything. So tonight, before you sleep, choose one memory, not the worst one, not the one that haunts you most. Just one that still carries a charge, and revise it. Enter the scene, feel it shift. Let the new version carry more weight than the old. You are not denying what happened. You are recognizing that what happened is not a fact, it is a story, and you are the storyteller. If past life regression has helped you, honor that. If karma as a framework has given you meaning, keep what serves. But know this, you do not need to go back further than this moment. You do not need to recover anything, heal anything, or balance anything outside your own consciousness, because consciousness is the only reality. And when you change consciousness, everything changes. Not someday, not in the next life, now. Dare to assume the past can be rewritten, try it. And watch what happens when the story you tell yourself finally becomes the story you want to live.